Coming up.
So we started podcasting for Reason to Behold because we have these really good conversations. We're just talking as friends, and we want to open it up to other people.
Popular culture is what a very select few were determining not so long ago, and I think Tolu alluded to that. What I think is happening now, and I'm really proud to say that, yes, I guess I join the rally on the other side of like, are we present at the table?
Yeah. And I'm saying this now, thinking about the corporate leadership struggles that's happening. It's a spiritual warfare.
What did the media creatives want to be released into the atmosphere?
Hey! Welcome to a special edition of For This Reason. This is the network edition. So we have quite a lot of us here. We have a growing network, which will be introduced in just a moment. But Ray, why are we doing this?
Because I thought it was a good idea. No, we're doing this because, like we said in the last episode, that we were creating a network of podcasters, Christian podcasters coming together and collaborating, working together because we want to increase each other's reach. We also want to increase each other's influence. And we want to continue to share Jesus with everybody in our own ways. So that's why we're doing this. This is why we've got everybody together today. And we're going to have fun having some great conversation.
Cool.
That's why.
Excellent.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I think we should go for some introductions.
Let's do that.
Really.
Which side do we start? Where should we go?
Whichever way you want.
Right. Let's go. Let's start.
I thought that slide direction was going to feed. No, it didn't. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Taffy, and I have a podcast that's called Created, and I have co-presenters, my friends Amanda and Emily, and together we came because we had a passion and a heart for women and what was happening in society with regards to their identity, and we wanted to create a narrative where people understood who they are and who they were created to be in light of what the word says. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Kel.
Amazing. Hey guys. All right, the arms ready kicking in. Okay, my name's Kelvin Uchemefinev. I run a coaching and leadership training practice called Kelvin Inspires. I also have a podcast called the Leadership Game Podcast, where we literally talk about leadership, dissecting it, the simplicities and the complexities surrounding leadership. In other words, to increase our awareness and also encouraging us to become better leaders who are more concerned about raising leaders and not followers.
Awesome. That's great. Good. Did well. Okay. So Luke.
Hi, I'm Tolu, and I'm the co-host of the Reason to Behold podcast and one of the hosts of the Ignite the Day podcast.
I'm Carla. I am the anchor for Christians In Media's Faith in Media podcast. It's a podcast that really highlights a lot of what people do behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, in terms of all aspects of media, culture and arts. And it's incredible to have people from across the board, whether they're working in secular or in Christian environments, utilizing their faith kind of behind their craft.
Awesome.
So this is really like the foundations now of this network, all connected with social media, sort of different aspects of bringing a Christian ministry into an area of their life and their walk.
What?
Yeah, go on.
Oh, what?
This is this time where I just pass over to you.
Oh, okay, fine.
Was that
this
the real one?
Yes, this is just the real one. Yeah,
We just go.
doing it. We're going.
Edit it all out.
So, all right. So, what's up? Welcome, by the way. So Taffy, this is. I'll just say your name. This isn't directly at you. So, guys, why is podcasting so important at the moment? Why is it so popular at the moment?
I think there's quite a big shift where before, for you to be known across the world or for your content to go places, it had to be, you had permission. So you'd have to go to a radio station or a TV station and they would decide whether or not your show gets aired. But now with podcasting, anybody can have access to that. So you don't have to go through the original channels that you had to before of, okay, pitch your idea, someone buys into it, they buy it from you, all that kind of stuff. Now you can actually just have your idea, record your content and put it out, and people can start to find it. So that's a really big shift that we're seeing from kind of the older media world, where now like everybody can be a content creator. So I think as Christians, it's really, really important that we're taking up that space, because now we actually can. You know, we don't have to pitch, we don't have to get sign off, we can just do it, and we can spread the gospel in a way that we couldn't do before.
That's awesome. So coming from the avenues that you obviously you operate in within your podcast, how do you find that? How do you find it? Does it click easily for you, or do you have to kind of create almost like a niche in what you're doing?
Oh, I'm much more of a flow person. So the two podcasts that I host, one of them is for a Bible school, so that's for Rhema UK and Ireland, and that's a little bit more structured. So we've created kind of our own niche in terms of we're there to provide inspiration, revelation, and encouragement. So that's really why we exist. So we've got those three things, and each episode fits into that. With Reason to Behold, it's very like free flowing. So that's really about me and my co-host and some guests, and that's really just about life and about faith intersects with business, life, family, friendship, everything like that. So that's often very much like turn up, talk, what do we want to talk about today? It just flows. So you can do either one.
Yeah, no, that's cool. What about you guys? What do you think?
I think it's very interesting because if anyone had asked me, are you going to be a podcaster? I would have been like, no, thanks. I love small groups, behind the scenes, no ways. But actually, I realized that we have a responsibility as believers and as children of God, that there's so much content that is being thrown into our faces out there, but how much of that has a foundation of what truth is as a believer? And that's when I actually got the oomph to rise up and actually go, actually, this is the call of every believer in terms of everyone is getting their voice out there, but how much of that is the truth? Because before, the narrative was very controlled, you know, totally, as you've just said, you know, it was about pitching your idea. What did the media creatives want to be released into the atmosphere? But now it's like anybody's game. Anybody can throw anything out there. So if we don't rise up and take up our place within the space, we are going to have a generation that is so confused, that does not know what is true, what is not true, because everybody's mixing everything and anything just to suit themselves. So I was like, okay, I might not be the biggest one, but I'm going to put my foot out there and be like, yep, I'm going to be a voice, and hopefully it's going to change some people.
It's a bit like a media battleground, isn't it? And we've got to take the Lord's fight, in a sense, to that, because there are people who are listening, people are out there allowing all kinds of things into their life.
I think that's something really interesting about what you said, because I think over time, podcasting has changed. So before it would seem like this really big thing. But I think what you said about like small groups and things like that, often those make the best podcasts. So we started podcasting for Reason to Behold because we have these really good conversations. We're just talking as friends, and we want to open it up to other people. So it doesn't have to be like this big thing. It can literally just be the conversations that you're having with your friends, with your family, with your Christian friends, and just opening that up for other people. So I feel like people have this perception of Christians, and actually like seeing how we do life together and the conversations that we have, I think shatters a lot of those things. And a lot of the people that listen to my podcast aren't actually Christians. And I got a really interesting text from our last episode from one of my non-Christian friends, just talking about how it resonated with him. And I didn't expect that. You know? So I think it's just that thing of opening up our lives and our conversations to everybody makes a massive difference. So it doesn't even have to be anything super special. It's just those conversations that you have.
And I think it's that shift that is happening within the world, especially with everything that happened with COVID, is that actually we need to change the dialogue and go, what is the gospel? The gospel is literally the good news. So how are we spreading the good news through the waves of what everyone is listening to on a day-to-day basis? And that's what our motive was, is that we wanted to bring good news to people who didn't know what good news was. We have doom and gloom left, right, and center, but actually, are we spreading what good news is? And sometimes it's actually just an episode of talking about, do you know what happened to me today? Everything went wrong. And in everything going wrong, I still chose to laugh. You know what I mean? It's the little things where actually some people are very isolated and they don't get those kind of conversations. And what podcasts are doing is that they're bringing in conversation within isolated places.
That's sort of a good foundation. So your first thoughts were when we started for this reason. You were thinking about a network. Just kind of explain what your thoughts were with having that network and how bringing all the little pieces together.
I was very aware that, like you said, obviously we're all doing our own thing. We're all very productive people doing our own stuff, and I think where everyone is kind of off fighting their own battle or pushing their own stuff, it's great. But when you get that synergy of coming together, it's really powerful. And I think that was always on my mind, was if we are doing this and we know you're doing this and we know you're doing this, then if we all come together, and then that synergy just kind of lifts everybody up. And so that was always my heart to sort of see that happen. And which is I think is really needed as well. If we're contending with what we're contending with, and we've all kind of identified some of the things that we are contending with in the media space, then I think that unity is definitely needed. So I'm really curious, like Carlo, obviously you deal with media all the time. How have you noticed the flavor of your podcast? How have you affecting that well?
It's interesting. I think I got into podcasting, through very different motivations. That's kind of what's been shared. I got into podcasting because my husband influenced me that way. He was like, you need to start a podcast or volunteer as a podcast. So I love to talk. That's my problem, maybe. And I can talk for England. I've always laughed and joked about that. But literally, I wanted to amplify stories. They are important. Stories, authentic stories of real people. And usually that is an engagement with a life story with regards to faith when it comes to the Christian narrative, particularly. It's always unique but so powerful because people are living testimonies, and the minute that is amplified in some way, we're saved by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So this has been just another platform and an opportunity for an amplification of a testimony as far as I've been concerned. I never saw it I was really inspired by Taffy, the truth needs to go out there. I didn't consider that. Maybe I should be a little bit more conscious about it. But my thing, because outside of podcasting, I'm a singer-songwriter, so it's always been about a story. And so for me, this is another way to get the story out there, which is another opportunity, another vessel, another format. And I've never thought about it in the terms of what you said, but it's so true. But I've just got on with doing the work, if that makes sense. How do we get the story out? The experience is, and listening to the narratives of the variety of people we've had the privilege to interview on our podcast with Christians in Media has been profound and really wide. People with very influential platforms, and then others that are behind the scene growing slowly. Some are photographers and other aspects of media. And the pictures that they capture in their stories, and hearing them speak about how their faith really fuels that creative space has been profound. And I think for me, I think the louder the presence is, and I think this ties a lot with what Taffy's saying, is then there is enough clout that is comparable with what the rest of the world is trying to offer as solutions, as ways to live, as cultures to follow. Popular culture is what a very select few were determining not so long ago, and I think Tolu alluded to that. What I think is happening now, and I'm really proud to say that, yes, I guess I join the rally on the other side of are we present at the table? And are we present with good content? Are we present also with excellence in how we're navigating our podcast? Because it's one thing, and we've mentioned this before, when everybody gets to flood a table, we then have to shift through what's good and what's not. And I think there is a definite kind of consciousness, certainly for me, about if I'm going to be here, I need to make sure that I'm representing who I'm really representing well. And as Christians, as particularly in public or kind of widely viewed or accessible platforms, we do need to have a sense of vigilance and responsibility about it. And if you're going to do anything that's creative and anything that you believe God has called you to do as a Christian representing our the body of Christ, and more importantly, Christ whom we represent as ambassadors, are we being excellent? And I think that is what fuels so much of, I think, my form of combating what's out there, if that makes sense. I feel like I've gone on a tangent. Please help.
That was cool. Listening to it.
You did ask me.
You were on the flow. It was good.
I think it begs the question though, what does excellent look like and what does that mean? Because I think when we started our journey, we didn't have all this equipment and all this kind of stuff, but it's being faithful with what you have. So for us, part of our excellence was we're going to turn up and we're going to release regularly. It's not going to be here 1 week, next month it's not there. But I think excellence is something I'd really like to hear from you guys. What does that mean to you? when you're doing your podcast? What does that mean?
Yes. What's the definition of successful?
Yeah.
Really, like you say, not everyone's got sort of super kit and things like that, but it's the actual content which is important. And I think that content is what can be a great encouragement. If the amount of stories that I've heard, not from our stuff, although we have heard some good stories from our stuff, but generally where they say, I was down, I prayed, I switched on a podcast, I heard someone say something, and it just lit my day up. And something like that. It doesn't have to be overtly Christian or Bible bashing, because that doesn't always work. But just like in the day-to-day, right, this is what we should be doing. We should be focusing on this, that, or the other, and just those little things can encourage someone to go, do you know what? Yeah, I needed to hear that, and then just take that step further. It's lovely hearing like your non-Christian friends sort of listening. You've said something which is based from like scriptural doctrine in a sense. You're delivering it in a day-to-day real way, and they're going, yeah, that makes sense. And it's something inside them going, oh yeah, that makes sense.
It's so amazing, because I think as Christians often we're conscious of like, I don't want to be Bible bashing. But that episode I was talking about, it was full of scripture. It wasn't, because when I mentioned the podcast,
That's exactly what you're doing.
but I'm thinking about it for Christians, because there's kind of feed my sheep, right? And then there's also like save the lost, which is slightly different. And I think I'm definitely more in the kind of feed my sheep camp than necessarily the evangelistic camp. But it's amazing how even with that, people who aren't Christian can still connect with it and still resonate with it, still get something from it. And it blew my mind, because I didn't even think like that.
Okay, well then my example is going to be
but I think it varies. That's the thing. It's not one size fits all. This is right, this is wrong. It's like, what is God asking you to do with your content? That's really the question, because God will do with the seed what he wants to do with the seed. It's God that brings the increase. It's our job to just sow the seed. You know.
So where we kind of come from with parable, like I love parables mentality in terms of the talents. It's like, what are we bringing as our talents? What can we use, and then God will do the growing. But if we don't use those, then that's when you get it taken away.
I want to dive over here.
What I was going to say about Calvin is that Calvin is really good with consistency. And I think that's part of the talents, is being consistent. And I wanted to ask Calvin a little bit about that consistency, because you do like the challenges, you do the lives. Every time I open social media, Calvin is there.
So I see Calvin's face.
He's present.
I almost feel like, can we say that again when they come?
I need this to encourage me.
Because honestly, the last couple of weeks, I've been flat out not being on socials. I've just been retreating back to doing other stuff. And I should have this group where I'm starting to do this daily challenge again, the do it now, and the physical challenges. And I'm like, come on now, get into it. For me, I think it's about not letting your foot off, which I have done quite recently. My foot's been off it. But I think it's about just setting those challenges, challenging yourself. And, again, quality over quantity, it's a question of that. You go give quality, good stuff. In my podcast, I'm particularly looking for people I can interview, people I can talk with. I don't just necessarily want people talking, because I've done that for a while. But now I'm trying to get people in. And so I would kind of stop for a minute. Let me go back to the database and who are the people I need to talk to interview. But for the other thing, I also feel when you're on the journey, you got to be able to set some challenges. And again, doing it outside is good, because when you put that challenge out, people are like, okay, you're going to show up now, Kelvin. Day 2, Kelvin. Day 3.
I watch you. I'm like, you missed my day 35.
Come on with the challenge. So all of that really helps you. So if you're going to do it, just set the challenges. Make it publicly known that you're going to be doing this for the next 3 months, and we'll be doing stuff. Episode 1, episode 2. In fact, when I first started the challenge of podcast, someone said to me, this chap has done over 1,000 episodes. Wow. He just goes on, every day, literally. I'm like, goodness me. He said, Kelvin, I want you to just do the first 10 first. I think I've just done the first 7 now.
Do you know
what I mean? I need to get
most people don't make it past 7. There is something about 7.
Yeah.
Most podcasts, they'll start. You think there's millions of podcasts.
Yeah.
Most of them don't get past episode 7. Wow. So there was something about that number. It's funny that you said that because most people don't make it past.
That's because number 7 means that it's the number of completeness.
I'm done.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. So with what you were saying about excellence and stuff, I think it's really key because it's always the best you can do with what you have.
Love that.
It's not always about, I think sometimes we can put so much pressure on ourselves to go beyond what we have. And because we can't see beyond what we have, we don't start, we don't begin. But actually, if we do the best with what we have, we can actually then have excellence in our field. And do you know what that produces? It produces genuineness. And when people are watching your content, and when people are watching and this is what I see with all of you guys, and this is why we love what you do, is because it's genuine. And it's not just genuine, it's excellent. And so you can see what you're doing the best with what you have, and also you're actually coming from a very genuine space. You're not trying to pretend you're something that you're not.
I think that links to the talents, right? Because the person that had 1 didn't do anything with it. The person that had 2 and the person that had 5, they got different outcomes in terms of number of talents returned, but they both got well done, my good and faithful servant, because they did the most they could with what they had. They were given that according to their ability. I think that links in really well with the story of the talents, where like you just got to do the best with what you have, and God still sees that as an amazing thing.
There's an interesting discussions kind of around the consistency idea as well, because we all have like other things that we're doing. We're juggling multiple things from conversations, but we're in a world and we're in a space which consistency helps grow. If you're not consistent, then you struggle to grow. But that consistency is difficult. So finding out that balance to get that right, how much do you put on this through your priorities to surviving with paying the bills and everything else?
How much you sacrificed into it.
But you define consistency. If you do something every month, that's consistent. If you do something every quarter, that's consistent. But sometimes we see consistency as it has to be every day. But if it doesn't, what have you promised to do? What have you said your consistency is going to be? If you said every month I'm going to show up, then you've been consistent.
And demand changes, doesn't it? So life happens. And so to be able to foresee consistency that you can't measure is very difficult, because life changes situations, doesn't it?
But I think if you'd said once a month, even if stuff changes, can you still meet your commitments? Do you know what I mean? Let your yes be yes and your no be no. So before I promise, I have to be really sure that, okay, no matter what happens, I can do one a month, or whatever my commitment is. And that's where you have to be really careful with the promise.
That's what I was
And I think that's very interesting, because that was one of the things I wanted to say about excellence, is that actually excellence and consistency are tied in together. Because it's that step of faith that you take that is the excellence. And I think so many times we look at excellence as in the big picture, the 1,000 episodes, that's excellence. But actually, in light of who God is, excellence is taking the step of faith. It's taking that step of faith and going, do you know what? I don't know what is ahead, but I'm still going to believe in what is burning within my heart, and I'm going to take that step. And as you keep being consistent, your excellence actually elevates every single time. I think about when we started, we had the jankiest mics. Like, they were so ghetto. Like, right now, I'm so embarrassed to even say, listen to our first episode. I'm like, listen to the ones like nearer now, because we have way much better mics,
I know that.
But resource-wise, we had a burningness within our hearts to be a voice. And there were so many things that would stop us from actually taking that step of faith, because we were looking at excellence. We were looking at the ones that had the 1,000 episodes, and we're like, who am I? But actually, who are you not to? Who are you not to step into that space? But as you step into that space, as you continue the consistency, you elevate your excellence. You actually go, do you know what? Girls, we need to commit to having better mics. We need to have better sound, because our consistency and our faithfulness is a voice And we don't want the disruption of our crackling in our mics to be a disruption for people to hear the good news. And that is what makes you just keep taking that one step forward. So I think we need to shift our look at what excellence is to actually go, it's consistency in that step of faith every single step.
And is it worth the investment?
Yeah.
And you don't arrive, even the people with 1,000 episodes, their episode 1 was probably terrible as well. That's the thing. To get to 1,000, you have to make all these little steps of getting better. And you said about quality versus quantity. And I heard someone say that to get to quality, you need quantity.
Come on now.
The more of something you do, the better you understand quality. The more refinements you make. The more interviews I do, the better I get at asking questions. So you need the quantity. And sometimes we say, okay, I'm going to go for quality, not quantity. So we don't do anything. Right? We say, I want it to be really... But then you've not done anything. You've not done any quantity. So go and do some quantity, understand like, okay, this works really well, this doesn't. Then you improve your quality, but you need the quantity as well.
What great encouragement, though, for people who want to start or feel they're being called to start, and they're hearing conversations like this, sort of saying, our first episode.
Maybe we should all put our first episode in, because mine was on my laptop looking down, had no microphone.
Our first episode
I was staring at each other. I was staring at the floor. I was staring at, like, it was so awkward.
Do you know what's interesting now? I'm sat here thinking, get back on that podcast, Kelvin. Get back on that. Because honestly, the last 2 or 3 weeks, I haven't done anything on it. And this is the point I'm trying to make, is the accountability. Having people around you, they have this energy that comes into you that just pushes you forward. Someone says sometimes you got to be in a room where you're not the smartest. So you got to be in a room where people are doing stuff because that just inspires you. It makes you feel good and you can get up and take action. You know, I mean, I'm a do it man. You know, I do it now. And you know, there's me also
I'll phone you tomorrow.
experiencing. There's me experiencing my own challenge. Again, for the new people who are going to come into podcasting, you have your moment where nothing's happening, you don't feel inspired. Listen, surround yourself with people who are doing it.
That's good.
Because now I'm telling you, tomorrow I'm going to be publicizing another one. Right? I'm not going to wait for the perfect time to get on and take action. And again, so this is a wonderful network because now I'm also feeling inspired to get back into it.
And that's what we want, guys. You know, that's what we want. And again, like you said, the accountability of it all. I think it's really important to have that accountability, that space where people know what you're going through. And also people know the influence that you're having as well. I think it's really good because I think sometimes, especially within the life of the church is so busy that the church is often focused on what it's doing, and that's fantastic. It needs to. It's not always focused on what everybody else is doing in the week. And so when we're releasing content in the stuff, we might be aware of each other's space and we might notice something that's, you know, what happened here? What happened over there? What's going on? That conversation, what happened there? And so we can then also check in on each other, make sure everybody's okay, and also make sure that we've got all the resource and support that we need as well. And again, to push forward and move forward and get things going. There's another question I want to throw out there to everybody. How easy is it to be unique as a podcaster?
I think, if I may just say, I think it's very easy.
Yeah?
I think it's very easy when you take the pressure off and just recognize that you have a voice and you have something to say. And that those who are called to listen to you will definitely come and listen to your podcast, whether they do a year later after it's been publicized or 2 months after. I think the pressure can be my reach, who am I talking to, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think what I've learned at the beginning of this journey for me was say it. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Say what's in your heart. Say it. As long as what you're saying is edifying, encouraging, inspiring someone, helping someone recognize who they are, what they have in them, just say it. And your voice is unique already. So your voice is so unique, just like nobody has my fingerprints here. Nobody thinks the way I think, you know. Everyone thinks differently. So then I have a voice. And in the marketplace, my voice is going to be heard. Someone's going to come from somewhere and say, hey, say more, say more. And someone will probably listen to what I say and say, not for me, which is fine. Which is fine, because we're not called for everybody. We're called for some people. Some people are going to get what we're saying. And That's just my own sentence.
No, that's good. I like it.
Stop.
You was giggling just then, Sam. What do you think, Sam?
Ooh, that is a very interesting one, because I feel like when we started, there was everything that was screaming, you're just another podcast. You're just another podcast that are telling women, here you are, be the greatest, empowering women. But actually, we then realized that as we looked at the different podcasts, even though they had, because our first name was not what it ended up being, because then we realized actually someone already has that name. But what they were doing was so different to what we were doing. But, you know, we went through all the ebbs and flow. You don't want to know. I'm just going to let it go. But it was about worth and value as a woman. And when we then boiled it down, we were like, actually, our foundation is Genesis 1, verse 27, that we are created in the image of God. So that's where we got created. And I think the uniqueness of your podcast comes from actually being obedient to what God has called you to do.
Very good.
And even if it looks similar to what people are doing, even if it's got you, it comes back to that whole thing, taking that step of faith, that excellence of going, this is what is burning within my heart. I'm going to take a leap of faith. And as we go, I'm just going to keep listening in and hearing what God is saying. And sometimes it's going to change a little bit. But actually, when I come back to the foundation of my why will always stay solid. But it might look different depending on what's happening in the world. So I think it's that thing of actually going, what are you called to do? And what is the burning desire that's within your heart? And that's what makes it unique.
Part of that, I was thinking, part of being humans, how is it like you buy a car and then every car you see on the road,
Yes, exactly.
it's that,
looks
that,
like yours.
that
And the same color too.
Yes, yeah, it's a bit like, I've got this really unique idea for a podcast. The second that you have that idea, you look around and everything's there. But what I love what you're saying with that uniqueness, because the uniqueness comes from how unique we are as individuals, and we're all on different journeys, especially with following Jesus and on those journeys, and that journey will inspire someone else because they will be having similar journeys, but also unique. So you'll say something to someone and they'll go bing.
Yeah.
I relate to that.
Absolutely. So someone would say, our journeys are different, but the enemies that we're all facing are the same.
Yeah.
So your journey, your destiny is definitely different. You're going somewhere. God's brought you here for a time as this in so many other ways. But the enemies we're facing the same. So share your thoughts, share your opinions, share what's going on, share your solution to the problems that you see happening around you. Whatever it is that God's placed inside of you, don't judge it. Just say it. Just let it go. And what Taffy says, listen. As you listen to the Holy Spirit, you find that you're improving on what you're doing. Maybe you got it wrong the first podcast, the second one's getting better and it's getting better and it's getting better. As long as we're attuned and we're listening, because we could get carried away. Some of the things I've noticed, I've got carried away. But when I listen to what the Holy Spirit is saying, my life becomes easier. It becomes easier. Just listen. Just listen.
You're going to say something, Tef?
No, he said it all.
What do you think, guys?
I would say, I think when it comes to anything to do with kingdom building, you've already struck a sense that if God has called you to do something, he's already placed something unique inside of you. And I love your analogy about the cars, because I was thinking of one like, well, everybody wears shoes, but I've got millions of different pairs of shoes. I'm that person. You can lie a bit sometimes. Joking, don't ever do that. But what I wanted to say is, like, just because we're all human, so we've already got that packaging that we've got in common, but there is a sense of authenticity and uniqueness. And also, when it comes to kingdom building, and you feel called, like, I love how Taffy spoke, so that she just felt that burning sense that God has asked you to do something. Most of us who are in this for kingdom building, it's going to come with something that's going to take us to a unique destination that I think Kelvin just said, which I think is gorgeous. And I think if you really are faithful to that, integrate to what he's called you to do,
That's good.
that is going to draw out uniquely what's inside of you. You probably don't even know it until you're consistent and you keep showing up. Because like most things to do is when God calls you, he never gives you necessarily the full picture in one go. It's step by step. But if you turn up for those moments, he will unearth inside of you things that will distinguish you in the way that he needs you to.
Yeah.
And he's the master builder. Let's lean on that every time. We know that it will be like, well, this just looks like a cookie cutter copy of something else when we're doing it for something's sake and not because we're doing it to fulfill what we feel God has asked us specifically. And you can do that, not necessarily, I'm just a podcaster. When I talk about what God has asked me to do, for me, that's something that we should be infiltrating in every area of our lives.
Yeah.
That's not, it happens to be a podcast, but it also happens to be on a microphone singing. It might happen to be if you're preparing a sermon. It might happen to be if you're a journalist and you're really great with with your penmanship. It might be like something that you find yourself exuding and expressing in the way that you stand in front of a classroom of like 3-year-olds, which I don't know how people do that, but they do. And they turn up every week.
Yeah.
There is something unique inside of them. And even what they're doing, preparing people and adults for tomorrow, there's something unique in how they're doing it, and God's placed them there. If we are faithful to lean into that aspect, it sets you apart every time, and God anoints it, and then he opens up the doors and he brings the right people to the marketplaces, as Calvin said. I really like that. And I think just to go back to kind of where my comment came from, is like, if we're honestly focusing on the kingdom building aspect of it, I think you will never not be authentic.
Yeah.
I always like, when I consider how completely different we are wired, you are very much sort of fully you are very creative and you are like I love,
don't know what you mean.
I love, we've had this conversation anyway, so I know you know what we mean. And I'm very sort of logical, and I like kind of a plan generally, but just like we did today, by praying beforehand and kind of giving it over to God, the amazing times that we just are in the same place and the same flow, because we're going in the flow of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And we're both along that journey. We're giving different aspects, and we're all at the same place, wherever we're kind of coming from.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing of trusting in God in that process.
It's this allowing God to govern you through your personality. And I think where there's a lot of uniqueness in each of us because we have our own personality. Yeah. And you'll find that when you look at the fivefold gifts of the lost my train of thought now. Someone just walked past.
Yeah.
When you look at the fivefold gifts, you've got the apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, evangelists. A lot of those are actually expressed through individual personality. And you can actually see those qualities in different people because they've got that different personality. And I think when we, like you said, the uniqueness that we do with our podcasts and stuff is always because with God's working through that area of our lives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we might do a quick timeout just to check that feels okay. He was going to do
What was the
test.
That would have been interesting.
What was the phrase?
It was the integrity. Like, how do you keep your integrity within the podcast field?
I think that's a really good question.
I would say accountability is a big part of that. I think, are you looking at integrity of what people say?
I think integrity of yourself in terms of the content that you're releasing and how for it not to be impacted by what's happening within media and within social media and within what the world is screaming out should be. How do you keep your integrity as you keep walking on that journey?
I think that's really good.
So you're saying the integrity of your faith?
Integrity of actually your content and what you're, because a lot of the times that people struggle, they start with good intention, but then they end up letting social media dictate the narrative.
Or just trending
Or,
novelty.
So
of the
I
content of their.
I had a really famous guest on my podcast, and he seemed fine. And I was asking him okay, how do you be good? He was like, I do hallucination. I was like, huh? I was just like, wait, what? He went off into this tangent about and the spirit person turns up and all this stuff. when I was editing it, I had to there was a big thing of I don't believe any of this stuff. I don't want it coming from my platform, but he's quite well known. So what do I do? Do I annoy him by cutting out all the stuff that's really important to him? Or do I stay true to me? And this was on my emotional intelligence podcast. So it's not openly a Christian one.
Yeah.
I'm still Christian.
Also, it's about your values and
Yeah.
who you are.
Yeah. So I cut it all out. I had to cut it all out. I was I can't actually
Was that feedback once you published the
I didn't even
episode?
talk to him, so I just left it.
That's
But he didn't ask me about it.
Yeah, but the
It's
real
available
part is
private
that
link
those are
only.
real
Yeah,
pressures.
Yeah.
Those are real pressures, and the more you become well known, or the more you are out there are going to be well known names that are going to come. And how do you hold your integrity in the stance of, oh, this will be really good for my podcast, and oh my goodness, we could just really, and it's how do you still keep integral? The beginning part is actually the content that you release, but also when you start getting different people coming in, even sponsorship.
Yeah.
We've had to talk about sponsorship on our podcast way before we even started, because we went, where is our line? Where do we draw the line? Because that actually starts dictating the narrative of your podcast. And you start going down a road that you're actually, I don't even anything that I'm doing anymore. But because that's where it took you.
I think we should go into that. No, that'd be a great chat.
That was not the conversation.
No. Otherwise, continuity-wise, we're going to really struggle.
I think it's
But that was so good. Can you repeat all of that again?
No, but I think
I should bring in the
guys,
famous.
I don't worry about it, because I think we can fit this all together, and the thing is, when we do stuff, right, it's always genuine, and that's the emphasis we go for. Is it's genuine, it's real. So part of my frustration, and this is me just being open and honest with everybody, part of my frustration with the celebrity mind is that everyone takes themselves so seriously, and it creates a really good ego. I don't know about you guys, but I've been in situations where God has humbled me massively, and there's nothing worse than having your ego destroyed by the hand of God, because it's got to a place where it shouldn't be. And so for me, when we do this stuff, even now, the point is to be genuine, it's to be real, it's to be transparent. If you need to get up and go, we could get up and go. No, I mean, someone's about to set the fire alarm off. But the point is, the more real people see things, I think that also that's important. I think, like what you're saying with integrity, because when you look at the media now, when you watch anything on the media, 90% of it's not true. It's not real. It's just not. And so that 10% of it is the true story, but then 90% of that is how they've slanted it, twisted it, inflated it to make it sound good, right? To sell more papers.
I have to butt into that.
Go on then.
How many people know that?
True.
It's so true.
Do you know what I
So
mean?
true.
I feel there's a specific
I thought he was going to rebuke me
generation.
then. I was
What is coming?
that Taft's going to rebuke me.
I was before you go down a tangent, I'm
Yeah.
actually, there is a very large amount of people that listen and hear what they hear and take it as truth.
Yeah.
And there is actually just a small generation that's left that knows that.
Yeah.
That 90% of what you watch is not true.
Yeah. I remember being sat in Jerusalem
Yeah.
in 2006, and this was before they pulled out Gaza for the first time. And so I'm sat in this restaurant and I'm watching the news. I won't say what news station it is, but I was watching the news, and they were reporting on what was going on. There was 3,000 Orthodox Jews at that time protesting in front of the Wailing Wall. And what they were reporting wasn't even close to being true. Not even close. And I was there. And so it's from that point forward, it showed me the condition of the media. And I know for a fact it's only got worse.
And that's what I'm going. Look at how blessed, privileged you are to have traveled the world and have seen things for what they are. But actually, we have a large amount of population that hasn't traveled, that actually hasn't left their own little town or even their country. And what they hear and what they see, they think is truth.
Yeah.
And that is the part where we're like, we need to rise up as children of God and as believers to actually go, we need to start putting out narrative that is true.
Yeah.
That is counteracting what is not true, because media is now just life.
People don't critically think.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
is the
They
thing.
don't anymore.
They don't critically think. They just take whatever they're given from.
bring it, bring it, bring it, bring it, bring it.
They're like, we're lazy. Do you know what I mean? Even as Christians, where it says like, well, study to show yourself approved, right? Whatever someone tells you, go and check it in the scriptures.
Exactly.
We don't actually do that as Christians. You'll just go to church on Sunday, take whatever the guy says. Okay, great. That's what most of us are doing. You're not actually going to check, well, is it even true that money is the real or evil? Is that what the Bible actually says?
And you're actually even just talking about church. Imagine how much scripture and people that are saying things are being thrown at you from social media constantly.
Yeah.
And how much are you stopping and opening your Bible and just going, hang on a minute. You know, there was this reel that went out there and someone was going, yeah, in John 3:16, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I was like, hang on a minute. But people have watched it and gone, that's what John 3:16 says. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. No, that's Psalm 23. Let's just hold up over here. Do you know what I mean?
I was watching a large US ministry over the weekend, and they said to their whole congregation about the UK collapsing because of all the riots. And I'm making out like the whole country had literally collapsed in on itself.
It does feel like that.
It's not true.
But he had got his information obviously from US media and things like that. And I'm thinking, really? Yeah, there obviously have been some riots, but
Yeah. And that's, to be fair, that's how the media wants us to feel about it as well.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
it wants to make everybody feel like it's the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
so you've got that level, and then you've got someone with a picture of their amazing looking breakfast. And I'm thinking, I want an amazing breakfast, and that's not clearly the place I've got to go. So yeah, completely the same.
Yeah. Because that's what I studied for my degree, is media, culture, and society. So how the media influences everything. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And most people will never know those things.
Yeah.
That's the real thing. So like, even like in movies, like even how we did the set today, right? We took care into everything that's on the set. It's the same with news, it's the same with movies. There's mise en scène, is what they call it, everything in the scene. So when you're watching the news, nothing is there by accident. Like the glasses, we put them there on purpose. We chose this table over that table on purpose. We created the set. But people don't think that that's literally happening to us all day, every day. Everything we see is curated for a narrative.
And
Wow.
It is incredible. And you think about how much is being involved, and you just see it as like I said, you just turn on your TV and that's normal, right? You look at your phone, that's life, that's normal. But actually, you're right. There's so much narrative involved. What you can say.
the other aspect to that is obviously, like with swiping, there is just a set amount of space that we are conscious of swiping, and we swipe past sort of horrific events and sort of non-horrific events, and we give it the same value of our time. Sort of bringing it back to sort of podcasts for us, we've got to give that value there, the sort of a boost, sort of, right, okay, that is valuable. This is life-changing that someone's talking about Jesus or Christian values or something like that. There is value in that compared to the next cat video or things like that. That's the other thing that we've got to think.
It was also coming to my mind just listening to this is the amount, as you said, of falsehood, deception, corruption that exists in the media in the world today, that you can go on Twitter and just Google, next thing you know, you're saying things you don't want to see, and it's just constantly going on. And I kind of feel the sense of rising inside my spirit, like we have to get up and put the truth that overshadows the falsehood. And as we create contents and we create things to help people change and people to see what is actually true, we have to back it up with the Holy Spirit, because this is a spiritual war that we're in. You know, everything is just there to convince you to look at something you don't want to look at, engage in conversations you don't want to engage in, because someone is pushing content out consistently, and they're doing it backed by their own spiritual source, which is obviously all under our feet. But we as Christians have to create even more content now that really goes out. But we don't just do it and just do it. We do it and we go back to our rooms and we pray and we're fasting and we're talking to God and we're praying overnight, God, give me the words, give me the right thing. As I push this out, let it touch the hearts of that young man, that young woman who was going through a difficult time. Let it touch the people who are believing in the wrong things to begin to believe in the right things. And I'm saying this now, thinking about the corporate leadership struggles that's happening. It's a spiritual warfare. And so now I just feel like, don't just try and create content, Kelvin, now. As you do it, go back and pray. Go back and pray that God move through this.
That's awesome. No, that reminds me of did anyone see the interview with Tucker Carlson and the president of El Salvador? You guys need to watch that interview. It's amazing. And basically he won the war on crime in his country within like 2 years or something like that. So you'd have to listen to it to get the full context of what he's saying. But he was saying that a lot of the gangs were actually satanic. And so they had a lot of rituals and witchcraft within what they were doing. He said that made it easier for me to win because we went to our boardroom and we prayed. He said we won the war in the air before we won it on the ground.
I'm on that.
And that's how he leads his nation. And 70,000 gang members were arrested. But this guy, the interview is amazing. Now you can see Tucker Carlson, he's just blown away by this guy, is what he's saying. So. But it kind of reflects back to what we were talking about and like what you said and stuff. It's about what we doing with our space, what are we doing with this space, what excellence are we pouring in, what integrity are we pouring in, and all these things, and we're ticking all these boxes. And I think doing it together is easier than doing it on your own. And one of the things I'm loving at the minute is if in the music charts you've got Christian music artists outselling secular artists.
Wow.
And I'm loving seeing that as well, because that just shows God's hand. I think one thing we also need to have in consideration is the favor of God. Because we can do all the hard work, we can do have all the excellence and all the rest of it, but ultimately the favor of God is on our lives.
Yeah.
And so we don't do anything other than through the grace of God. And that kind of removes any ego. What you were saying?
I was just going to say, as a time of reflection, really, it's been quite good, kind of breaking down podcasts as things. Has anyone kind of felt called in any way, or thought about reshaping things, or had any ideas on their own influences?
Okay, I was going to say, so look, the podcast that I've been speaking about is the Christians in Media one, but I also have another podcast that is kind of undergirding my business, which occupies a space that I think is quite challenging, but still necessary. But what I've seen over the last, I think, few months is actually seeing there's a lot more of a faith element coming into a business, while that didn't originally start like that. And I think when I got into this to begin with, my business partner, they were in a very different space with their own personal faith. We love what we do. It's something that operates in the business and commercial and corporate space and it's really needed, but it's about people and about empowering people. Nowadays, that can come in a lot of different ways, as you know. And so to find a space to be integrated to my personal values, as well as contend in a space where there's a lot of other voices that will probably be in like direct contravention of that, is a tough space to be. And recently, I think in the last few months, my business partner has gone into very different spaces with her own faith. She's now all in with her Christian faith, which is incredible. And I've just been a front row seat person watching this happen over a period of 2 years.
That's lovely.
So we're talking, this is not overtly a Christian business. This is something outside, and our podcast is always undergirded what we're trying to operate in the field. And all of a sudden it's becoming, when you're dealing with people's empowerment and you're dealing with people having to find ways to see value in themselves or see how they can bring value to the marketplace.
Yeah.
Invariably, I know this, you're going to find your way back to biblical principles.
Yeah.
And as she has found her way back there, we've been speaking about topics to do with success. What does that mean? Or, things like that. And she's like, we're going straight here. We're going to talk about Christian faith and we're going in hard. And I'm like, okay. And it's not because I pushed it there. Yeah. The person that started out from this seat from the get-go and just watching that happen. And I think you asked, back to your point, like, what do you see happening? And I'm like, even though this is meant to be a business that wasn't overtly Christian, no matter what platform we're in, God is finding his way through there. Are we going to turn up and say, yes, I'm ready to take this up?
Good.
Am I going to be ready to facilitate, almost like a midwife bringing that through?
Yeah.
And are we going to be good with that space? Because it can be tough. It's like learning how to discern, what do I say now in the moment? Or sometimes just my actions, my behavior, my conduct, my ethics, my excellence has to speak on behalf of who I'm representing.
Yeah.
Am I going to be good with that when in a space that can feel really overwhelming, when they're asking very compromising things of you, or demanding things that may cause you to be in a position where you have to make a choice, like what you said earlier. So to your point, I see a lot of that happening. There is an awakening. It feels like God is but a hair's breadth away. I keep saying this, but a hair's breadth away for people. And I think, going back to, I think, what we see earlier as well, people are saying about, well, you know, we're constantly bombarded with a contrary message, a message that is kind of full of lacking hope, despair. It's gloomy. It's not actually true. And a lot of it's very heavy.
Yeah.
But actually, when we're listening to real people, they're like, actually, I would consider this gospel today.
Yeah.
And you're like, I never saw that coming. I thought that you belong to this massive wave that seems to be complete in opposition to the values of what it means to be Christian, or to have godly values. But actually, it's not true. And I'm seeing this right now, even in the spaces that I occupy.
It's interesting. I think people like to be rebellious. So I think when their rebellion is no longer in their control, they then all say, okay, whoa, I didn't choose this. You know, and then that's when they start to consider God. You know, I find in some cases where, like, because again with this, there's obviously there's a big agenda going through the world at the moment, and people are liberal to an extent, but it's gone beyond their control. It's gone beyond where they would go, and because of that, they're like putting the brakes on and saying, hang on, why is it going this far? Why is it going this fast? And why is it this aggressive? And normal people, everyday people are saying, okay, but what about God? And I think that's really credible.
And I think it's so good what you've just said, Carla, is that we are on the cusp. We are on the cusp of a massive movement. And my question to believers is, are you ready? We need to be found ready. And that means that with the talents and the gifts that we have, what have we nurtured in a way that is uncompromising to the truth? And we need that foundation to be so strong now more than ever, that we have a message that is uncompromising to the truth, but we are bold enough and courageous enough to step out into that space and go, this is what I believe in, and I will not be shifted.
Come on. Yeah.
And the thing is that we need to be connected to the source. And our source is God. Our source is Jesus Christ. But if we're not connected to the source, we're going to move with the wind. And if we're moving with the wind, we're not going to catch on to the change and the shift that's about to happen. And we need to be the people that are going to put the building blocks, that are going to put the pillars to the new shift that is happening. And if we don't do it, someone else is going to come in and do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to be protecting in this time and in this age.
Cool. Guys, it's been great talking to you. I think we've kind of gone through a lot, and it's been really, really great hanging out, chatting, and Taffy just has random fits of laughter. So, awesome, guys. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for coming. And we've covered a lot. We've had a great conversation. Enjoyed having time together, and this isn't going to be the last time for sure. So, guys, God bless you. Thanks for tuning in, and see you soon.